Okay, welcome today. Mr. Sussman and Mr. Duker are going to work together today to just kind of give you guys a little brief overview of how life in the North and life in the South were so very different in the years leading up to the Civil War. And the main reason that we're doing this is to show you guys this is just another factor that contributed to the start of the Civil War in 1861.
So, for instance, and while we're doing this, we'd really like you to go ahead. We're going to be filling in some answers, and it's important that you go ahead and fill in the answers along with us. That way, you can have a record of this too. It'll be good for you to study off of along the way.
All right, so I will be doing how people lived in the northern United States, and Mr. Sussman is going to handle life in the South. So number one, we're going to talk about success. What did people in the North view success? And basically, people that were wealthy were supposed to keep it kind of a secret. You weren't supposed to make a big deal, and you weren't supposed to show off your wealth. It was considered bad manners.
The South, on the other hand, had no such concerns about showing off their wealth. In fact, in the South, it was seen as a sign of your wealth and your social standing to show off your wealth, to build huge mansions, and just as importantly, to entertain and to throw big fancy parties for all of the surrounding neighbors and people of the town.
Sounds like a good time.
Yes, indeed.
Next, when it came to work ethic, people in the North had a very strong work ethic. They were busy. They were interested in business. Making deals was important. And these Northern Yankees said, never waste any time at all because time is money.
The South, as you're beginning to see, had a very different view on this. Gentlemen, so-called gentlemen in the South, were not supposed to actually do the work. They weren't supposed to get their hands dirty, and instead their major tasks were delegating. It was giving orders to their slaves, and they were supposed to spend the rest of the day just living the good life.
As you can start to see, if you were one of the privileged few in the South, life was pretty good. The only problem was most people weren't in this upper class. Getting to economy. The North is the land of cities and factories, and when the European immigrants started coming across the ocean, they went to live in these cities, and they were the primary workers in all of the new factories that are filling up cities in the North.
South went very much the other direction. Instead of building, while the North was building railroads and factories and industrializing, the South was settled already in their ways with more farms and plantations. So immigrants didn't come to live in the South because there were no jobs. The economy of the South was dominated by large cotton plantations and slave labor. There was just no jobs available for free immigrants.
All right, next topic is religion. Religion was a big part of both the North and the South, but in the North, in New England especially, people were really urged to study the Bible. People were expected to take lessons from the Bible, and they used the Bible to look at slavery as a sin against God. Owning another human being was definitely considered to be a non-Christian belief.
The South was also the country was founded by followers of religion, but it was not as important in the day-to-day life of the South. Instead, religion was used for the exact opposite purposes in the North. Rather than seeing it as a sin against God, Southerners used religion actually to justify their ownership of slaves. So they viewed it rather than being a sin against God, but actually being as something commanded by God.
Our next topic is called temperament, and that's kind of, I guess the good way to describe it is, what's your personality like? How do you react to challenges in life? And in the North, law and order was very important. So if you got into an argument or a disagreement with someone, you were expected not to take the law into your own hands, but to go and solve any of your disputes in the courtroom. Basically, let's let the lawyers and the judges solve our argument for us.
The South preferred to take a more personal route to solving their problems. Southern gentlemen solved problems their own way. Rather than allowing a court or a judge to handle the issue, they would settle it man to man. And the way that you settled a dispute man to man was that you fought. You would either fight or have a duel, which was exactly what it sounds like. People take steps away from one another, turn around, and shoot at one another, and the winner is the one who walks away.
I probably would prefer the courtroom on that one.
It does seem safer.
Education, we studied the reform movements. We talked a lot about education and how it got started. And basically the North has the monopoly on the first schools. Learning was important in the North, and the first public schools were created almost exclusively in the northern states.
The South was distinctly different again, right? If you were the son or daughter of a wealthy slave owner, your parents would hire tutors to make sure that you got the very best education available to you. On the other hand, if you were a poor white, you had very little educational opportunity, and all blacks actually by law were uneducated. It was against the law in the South to educate a slave, and there were very few free blacks. It was actually against the law to learn to read.
Our last category is, what did the North and South think about each other? How did they view the other half of the country? The South was thought of by the North as an uncivilized place, a bunch of hillbillies, unchristian, uneducated, a bunch of backward slave-owning people, and they thought that the South was completely dominated, completely controlled by cruel slave owners. The slave owners of the South had taken control of the government and the people, and they basically ran the show.
The North had their own opinion the Southerners had their own opinions of Northerners as well, where the Northerners saw the South as uncivilized and uneducated. Southerners viewed the Northerners to be weak. They were cowards. They were city dwellers who were unwilling to be manly and unable to be manly. Basically, men in the South often thought that Northerners, my students are familiar with my handwriting, sorry. The Northerners were basically just wimps, and that they were unable and unwilling to stand up and quote unquote act like a man.
So basically, the reason that we're showing you this is just we're getting close to the start of the Civil War. And when you try and think about how can you get to the point where you're ready to shoot at another person, how can you hate someone that much that you're going to pick up a gun and take a shot at them? Part of the reason is that they were so different. They didn't have a lot in common, and they were able to say, I'm better than you, you're my enemy, even though we're all Americans, now we can start shooting at each other.
And also important to see that it was a long time coming. These differences, the distinction between the North and the South, did not appear in 1860, but it was the result of really 200 years of development that led us to this point.
We thank you guys for your time. Bring your note sheet back to class with you, and this is going to be something that we're going to use in class in the next week or so, and also a definite thing that will help you out on the test to help you get ready for that.